You are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. From the lips of Jesus, challenging and daunting words. And note this. Jesus doesn't tell us to become the salt of the earth. He doesn't tell us to be like the salt of the earth. Rather, he says, you are the salt of the earth. And likewise, he doesn't tell us to become the light of the world. He doesn't tell us to reflect the light of the world. He tells us we are the light of the world. And he doesn't offer a choice here to be or not to be the salt of the earth, to be or not to be the light of the world. Rather, he names us, his followers. He names us his salt, his light. He makes us responsible for being his salt on earth, his light in the world. Be helpful here to understand the cultural context in which Jesus is using these images. The context that colors what Jesus meant and how his first listeners understood what he was saying. For instance, if you think that Jesus is speaking here about the salt that we pour on popcorn or add to the stew that's cooking on the stove, you'd be wrong. If you've ever visited in the Middle East, you may have seen along the road in villages clay ovens. Such ovens have been used for thousands of years. Often a larger oven would serve a small compound of families. That's how it was in the time of Jesus, and is still that way in some places in the Middle East. And on this side of the world, you find these clay ovens in the poor communities of Haiti. Now, the common fuel for such ovens wasn't oil or gas or wood. These clay ovens were fueled by camel dung and donkey dung. I know it's gross. This is even worse. Children were given the task of going out and collecting the dung and mixing it with salt and then molding it into patties that would be left out in the sun to dry. Then a whole slab of salt was placed at the base of the oven, and the salted dung patties were placed on that. You see, salt has catalytic properties which cause the dung to burn. But eventually that salt slab loses its catalytic capacity. It burns out, becomes useless, or as Jesus said, good for nothing except to be thrown outside and trampled underfoot. In Aramaic and Hebrew, the two languages that Jesus would have been familiar with, one and the same word means earth and clay oven. You are the salt of the earth. You are the salt of the clay oven. So what Jesus has in mind when he tells us you're the salt of the earth is that we are to be the salt. We are to be the catalyst, the fire, the heat in the clay oven. For Jesus and the people of his time, to be the salt of the earth meant to be the fire starter, to be the heat that fuels the community oven where people gather to be warmed and fed. Challenging and daunting. Clearly, it would be much easier for us if Jesus had been thinking of a salt shaker on the dining room table. But he was talking about something much earthier than that. Too earthy for your taste? Well, the work the Lord assigns to us who are supposed to be the salt of the earth, that work is pretty earthy. It's nitty-gritty. It's practical. It's basic. Isaiah, in the first reading tonight, Isaiah gave us a to-do list for this work. Remember what he said? Share your bread with the hungry. Shelter the oppressed and the homeless. Satisfy the afflicted. That's exactly what we sang in the opening song. These folks, the afflicted, the homeless, the oppressed, the hungry, they are in the news every day of the week. And the words of Jesus call us to figure out how we might be the salt of the earth for those whose needs are so great. Challenging and daunting. Then there's the business of being light for the world. And that curious bushel basket that Jesus talks about. Let's again look at how the people in his time would have understood that. In the homes of first century Mediterranean people, the same people who depended on clay ovens for heat and food, in their homes there was no electricity, no batteries. So after sundown, their source of light was little oil lamps. They were small. One of them could fit just in the palm of your hand. They didn't throw an enormous amount of light. But think about when the power lines are down, you don't have any electricity at home, you light candles. Think about the difference that happens in the darkness of your house when you light one candle. It cuts through the darkness. Doesn't light everything up like daylight, but you can now navigate through the darkness. Just like a little clay oil lamp. Just as folks in the time of Jesus would never think of putting their little oil lamp under a bushel basket, neither would you place your candles in a corner of the room during a storm. You'd set those candles in places where they give light to the whole house, just as Jesus said. So when Jesus says we're to be the light of the world, he's not asking us to be lighthouses on rocky coasts. No. He's imagining us to be little oil lamps in a darkened house. Just like this, he said, your light must shine before others so that they may see your good deeds, so that they may see when you share your bread with the hungry, when you shelter the oppressed and the homeless, when you satisfy the afflicted. And if you do these things, Jesus says, then your light shall break forth like the dawn. He goes on, if you remove from your midst oppression, false accusation, and malicious speech, all of that's in the news every day too. If you remove all that, then light shall rise for you in the darkness, and the gloom in your world shall become for you like midday. So in the scriptures tonight, Jesus is calling us to start fires, get things cooking, be the light in the darkness of poverty, hunger, homelessness, and oppression. Challenging and daunting. In just 10 days, it will be Ash Wednesday, the beginning of Lent, a season that calls us to prayer, fasting, and caring for the poor and the afflicted. It's not too early to start thinking about how each of us will live Lent this year. And perhaps a good way for framing our thoughts about that would be to consider how this Lent you and I might grow in being the salt of the earth and light for the world. Perhaps we might consider a Lenten effort more earthy, more nitty-gritty, more practical, more basic than giving up chocolate for 40 days. As we come to the Lord's table tonight, pray with me that Jesus will light a fire in our hearts and fan to flame the light of faith that's already ours. The same light of faith that got you to come here tonight, in the cold, during the Super Bowl. You're here. Pray with me that we might be the salt of the earth and light for the world.